Hello YouTube, Debbie here. I'm feeling much better, and because of that I feel like I want to do some canning. This year I have 12 heads of cabbage. By some standards that might not be a lot. By my standards that's pretty good. This head here is huge, and this is what most of my cabbage looks like. I'm going to dehydrate, but Mrs. Wolfie showed me that yes, you can cabbage, and it doesn't have to be sauerkraut. Now that's very interesting for me because I have a lot of canned corned beef. And I'm thinking to myself, when I go back to work, when school starts, it would be nice to be able to come home, open up a jar of corned beef, and open up a can of this cabbage. I also have canned potatoes. Throw them in a pot, heat it up, and yum yum. We have a nice Irish dinner. Well, it's really American, but we all say it's Irish anyway. That's one thought. Also, if we're in an SHTF situation or a real bad time, it's going to be nice to have food like this. This is comfort food. So today we are going to can cabbage. And I want to thank Mrs. Volte for giving me the idea. First, we're going to cut up our cabbage. Those that are new to prepping, you may be teased. People may say to you, why in God's name would you can up cabbage? Cabbage is pretty cheap. Well, I'll tell you what, when there comes a food shortage, and it's coming, nothing's cheap. And cabbage is a pretty nice staple to have. Besides the food I told you about, you can put pasta in with your cabbage and make a huska, I believe it's called. It was delicious. I had it this year. I mean, that in itself is a meal. Anything you can do to help yourself in some way is a positive step for prepping. So right now, I'm going to cut up my cabbage. What I want to do is get the cores out of them. And you know what? If you get a head of cabbage and you cut it, don't worry about, I don't know what a core looks like. You will. In my case, these cores, I'm going to cut the good part of the cabbage off, and I'm saving the cores for my chickens. My chickens get everything because I live. Now, it would be wise to take your cabbage and put it in a pan of water, because we are going to boil this up for about 3 minutes. That's called blanching. Now I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to finish up cutting up all this cabbage. So I have a huge pot here, and that's only 2 of my cabbages. This is pretty neat. Now I'm going to fill this with water, and we're going to blanch it for at least 3 minutes. I'm going to put water in it. Well, more water. This thing's so heavy I can hardly put it on top of the stove. And we're going to get our cabbage nice and hot. In the meantime, I'm going to put my jars in my oven and get them hot. They're nice and clean. I've decided to use my regular canning jars. That's the smaller size top, because the wide ones I'm going to use for pickles and things that are hard to get in and out. What I want you to do though is to put your finger over each one of these and see if there's even the slightest little bump or lump or cut. If there is, throw that bottle out or use it for something else. Don't can with it. Your seal won't stay sealed. You're going to wash these, rinse them very, very good, and then we're going to put them in the oven at about 200. We're going to leave them in there until we are ready to can. Now we're going to pressure can, so that is going to sterilize anything there is. While I'm cooking my cabbage, I'm going to clean my jars and put it in the oven. I put my jars in the oven, and I set it for 180 because it's going to take a while to get the cabbage ready, so these will be plenty hot. Make sure you have nice clean lids and bands. I have 8 nice lids and 8 bands. You know, your bands, as long as they're not defective and bent up, you could use them. They could be icky and looking, that doesn't matter. What matters is that they're useful for keeping these lids on until there's a seal. And then if you're smart, you always take these bands off anyway. Otherwise they can rust and you'll never get into your jars. Now I'm going to use distilled water. And the reason why I'm going to is because once my cabbage boils up for a while and I blanch it, I am going to rinse it off, and then I'm going to replace that with hot distilled water. And the reason why is, a few years ago, I made a video on jarring up turnips. And turnips are delicious. But in my haste to make the video, I forgot to rinse my turnips and put clear, clean distilled water in. They would have been beautiful white turnips. Instead, over the last 2 years, they turned to be a real crappy looking gray. Although they were good to eat, my kids just didn't want anything to do with them. And I don't want to be stuck in a bad situation where kids will not eat something, because I'm telling you, they won't. Even in a bad situation. Just because they're hungry don't mean they're going to eat. I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. And so we're going to make this nice green cabbage. When it comes out of the pressure canner, it is going to be nice green cabbage. Now let's see. Oh, there we go. It's going to be the same color. If you don't drain out this fluid after it blanches for a while, you're going to have like a golden color. It might even go gray. And some people don't mind that, but I absolutely do. And don't worry, I mean, cabbage is a crop in the ground. You might find yourself an ant or two floating around. I would normally tease the kids and say, oh, well, more protein. But in truth, no, we'll take that out. So, gotta do what you gotta do. So I'm going to take my distilled water and I'm going to put it in a pan, because it's got to be heated up too. It's nice if you have a tea kettle. I borrowed my tea kettle out to, again, a newbie, and I have not gotten it back yet, but I will. In the meantime, we will make do with what we have. So we're going to heat up that water. It's going to be boiling when we ladle it into the jars, the hot jars. Everything's hot. Cabbage is hot. Water is hot. Jars are hot. There is a definite odor coming from the cabbage, and it smells like everybody in my house was eating beans last night. But you know what? I know what it is, and we'll air out the house and it'll be just fine. So as you see, this is starting to boil. And when it does, we're going to go for 3 minutes. Now while your cabbage is almost boiling up, your water is heating up in your canner, and your water's heating up, your distilled water's heating up in your pan, and you have your lids ready. Make sure you also have a pad to work on. This I'm using just to make sure my cabbage gets equal time, because you have a lot that wants to float. Make sure you have a ladle, because we're going to ladle that water in the hot jars. One of these, it's a lid grabber. This is amazing. This is the best find ever. And then you want to have a lid, a jar lifter. When you get to know how to do this, it's very simple. But when you first learn, you're like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Don't be afraid. Just plug along, one step at a time. Now our cabbage is truly starting to boil. So I'm going to wait a couple more minutes, and then I'm going to time it. You know what cooked cabbage looks like. That's what you're looking for. And your guess is as good as mine on how much we're going to be able to can with this. But I'm going to can whatever I can. You know what I mean. This is nice. Cabbage is beautiful. Ouch, it's hot. If you're new to canning, you're soon to find out that hot jars are really, really hot. I have some calluses on my hands, so it's not so bad. But I would probably recommend you wear gloves. Hot glass is hot. So we're going to stuff the jars, but not too tight. But I'm not going to overstuff these jars. And don't forget, don't put salt in it, because salt is sauerkraut. Boy, I'm telling you, I just got this feeling like this fall, there's just not going to be time. What we're doing now is going to matter. And I'm not a doom and gloom kind of person. I never have been. But I just got this like feeling. And it's just weird. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. And I hope I am. God, I hope I am. So I'm just going to put in enough. I think I'll put in a little bit more. You want it like a loose pack. Don't get too crazy. You know, figure out what you like to eat. Now, a pint jar would have just not been enough. So, that's why I'm doing quarts on this. Plus, I like to save my pint for meat. And quarts, you know, you have a pint of meat, that's a pound. And then you have a quart of your vegetables like this. This is a nice dish, I'm telling you. And I want to thank Mrs. Volti again for this. She is absolutely an amazing woman. But so you're getting the idea, and I'm going to finish this up. And there we go. We got 5 nice quarts. Now I'm going to put that in the canner. And I would recommend you use a jar lifter, but I have pretty good calluses on my hands. Alright, that's all I have to put in there, so that's what I'm going to can. 5 quarts. As a teacher, I don't assume my students know anything, and that's a good way to be, because you teach fundamentals that way. When you get your jars in the canner, turn it on and let it slowly get to a boil, and this is going to come out violently here for 10 minutes. Once it starts coming out violently, and I mean really pouring out, just not little puff puff, pouring out, then you're going to set your timer for 10 minutes. You can see how violent the water is coming out of there. It's just steaming. This is what you want. You want it for 10 minutes. This is where I'm supposed to be pound-wise, 10 pounds. And I'm going to do that for 55 minutes. So I'm going to set my alarm for 55 minutes, and I'm going to keep that gauge at the 10-pound mark. For any new people, if that gauge goes below the mark where you're supposed to have it, you have to start your time all over again. That's why I don't play with it. I get a chair, I plop my behind right in front of it, and I watch it the whole time. There it is, 55 minutes. Now we're just going to leave it alone, but we're going to turn it off. And we're not going to remove this cap, the weight, and we're not going to do anything until this goes all the way down to 0. And that'll be anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. Just leave it alone. Now, even though my canner says that 0, listen to it. Yeah, don't go grabbing this thing off of there. That's the weight. Don't stop the canning. Wait till everything just stops making noise and stops bubbling. And then you can go in and check everything out. The back little thing is down. This, we can pull it off because there's no more sputtering. You don't hear that anymore. Everything's down. When you open this up, it's going to be hot. So open it up away from your face. Woo. Let's see how this turned out. Looks pretty good. There you go. You see, it's still green. Yay! There you go. I got 5 nice quarts, and they do look good.